Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you all. I'm so excited for today's webinar, and we are back at it again with our favorite Kate Woodward Young from Childcare Conversations. This is a part two of our how to run a best-in-class childcare program. And today we're going to be focusing and examining how break-even works as a practical leadership tool. So we're going to be connecting classroom level decisions about enrollment, staffing, pricing, and scheduling to the actual financial sustainability of your program. And so the idea today is to challenge some assumptions that programs keep and keep the assumptions that keep programs stuck rather, and build the awareness that you can act on right away. For those that don't know, my name is Sasha Rice. I'm the co-founder of Playground and the producer here of Early Childhood Investigations. I'm so excited to welcome back Kate to the webinar series. And if you are new here or if you're not familiar, this webinar series, Early Childhood Investigations, is part of and produced by Playground, the childcare management software, as part of our mission to make excellent childcare accessible to all. And the way that we are attacking and trying to achieve our mission is in two main ways. The first is through early childhood investigations, this content pillar, where we are bringing on experts like Kate to share her wisdom and expertise with all of you to help upskill and uplevel the entire industry. And then the second pillar that we lean on is through our technology, the Playground childcare management software, which you can learn about if you scan the QR code in the bottom right corner. And this is a platform that's designed to help you stay on top of all of the numbers that you need to understand to keep your business running in a responsible and sustainable manner. Um, and B, make the experience for yourself, for your team, for your families significantly easier so that hopefully you are saving a whole bunch of time to then invest in all of the newfound skills that you're learning here. So across both parts of uh, the spectrum, we are trying to make this mission a reality, and we really are on this mission because of an initial need for family. We initially built Playground for Josh and Dan, my co-founders' mom, their grandma, their aunt, who were all in preschool and early childcare, whether they were administrators, directors, owners, and we initially built Playground for them. It turned into a whole big thing. I'll talk about more about it at the end, but if you're curious to learn more or poke around, especially while I introduce things in the very beginning, feel free to scan the QR code in the bottom corner. Now, the runtime for today is 1 hour and 30 minutes, so do make sure that you are somewhere quiet and comfortable to make the most out of today's session. And we have automatic attendance, so there's no need to write in and check in that you're here. I promise you, our system knows that you're here. Even if you get kicked out and come back in, we got you covered. Now, some tips and tricks. We love to use QR codes, as you can already tell. So try to make sure you have a smartphone or a tablet at the ready to scan those QR codes when they pop up. We also are recording today's webinar. All of our recordings, all of our webinars are recorded. I can't speak today. So if you're curious about watching some of this content on demand, including today's webinar, you can just navigate to ecewebinars.com/recordings to get access to all of our content. Now, in terms of participation, your camera and mic are off, so we can't see you or hear you, but we would love to hear from you. And the best way to do this is using the Q&A panel. This is where, if you have any sort of technical problems, you can message in there, and myself and Hannah would be happy to assist. But more importantly, Kate is always really, really good about answering questions both in real time and at the end when we do a Q&A. So do make sure to throw questions in there, and we'll get through as much as time allows. We're also opening up the chat today. Normally, we use it as a sort of like one-way broadcast from us to you. So right now it is closed. The chat is closed, so you're only going to see messages from Hannah. But in a few moments, when Kate takes over, the chat will be open and you'll be able to communicate in there, ask questions, engage in real time. Now, the other way to engage in real time, I see some of you have figured this one out, is emoji reactions. Um, You can throw your emojis, your favorite emojis in. Great way to indicate when there's a specific point that you want to double down on, or if you just want to, throw some dopamine my way, you can feel free to do that. Now, if this is not your thing and you find it distracting, that's totally fine. There's a little arrow button in the bottom right corner, sorry, in the top right corner of the reactions button that you can click on to minimize or hide the emojis, however you desire. And lastly, we also have closed captioning at the bottom of your screen, so this can be turned on in any language, and if this helps you follow along, then that's why it's there. Phenomenal. Now, Kate was kind enough to send over her slide deck in advance of today's presentation, so if you would like to download it and follow along, scan the QR code on the screen or check out the link that Hannah just shared in the chat. We will also share the link a few more times throughout today's webinar in case you change your mind later on. And I should always mention, this is also accessible on our website. So if you go to the actual webinar registration page, if you scroll down, there's a download resources button as well. Now, everyone who registered is going to get a follow-up email 24 hours after the webinar concludes with a link to the recording. And if you are here from now until the very end, you will receive your very own personalized certificate of attendance. This will be found in both your ECI portal and your email within 7 days. So keep an eye out for that. If you are leaving early or you joined late or you're watching this as a recording, you're not going to be seeing that personalized certificate, but I will provide you with a blank certificate link that you can download on the last slide of today's presentation. Now, the last thing I want to talk through is our Savings Club prizes. We want to entice you to stick around, and so we're giving away two $75 gift cards to two lucky folks who are here from now until the very end. We are picking these folks at random, and I will announce who the two winners are, so stay tuned for that. And we're also giving away two $75 gift cards for folks that fill out our survey. So at the very end of our presentation, if you haven't been here before, you'll know that there's a 30-second survey that pops up that you can give us all of your unfiltered feedback about what you liked, what you didn't like, what we could do better for you. And two people who fill it out will be selected at random, and you'll win the gift card. We'll get in touch with you and get you your gift cards. So it's a win-win-win, and we're very excited about giving out our prizes. About a month ago, we decided to double the number of prizes that we're giving out. So it's like Oprah every single week. You get a gift card. You get a gift card. Okay, that's it from me. Kate, you've been on here infinite number of times. You know how this goes, but thanks again for making the time. We're so excited that you're here. And if you want to unmute and take over the screen share, the floor is yours. Good to see you.
Sounds great. I am so glad to be back, and I am even more excited by the fact that there are almost like 400 of you who decided that this was a topic and a way that you wanted to spend your afternoon. So I am going to warn everybody, we are going to talk numbers, but we're also going to talk about something that you might want to have paper and pencil for. So if you don't already have a piece of paper and a pencil, I'm going to suggest that you go grab one, even if it's just a little Post-it note or a couple of Post-it notes, because well, we're going to talk numbers, and we are going to encourage you to join us and have some of that conversation specifically for yourself. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Kate Woodward Young. I am the co-host of Childcare Conversations. Like most of you, I've been in the industry for just a little bit, and I have held every single role, including I was the director of one of 4 locations. My co-host and business partner was the owner of those 4 locations. So I've seen lots of really great and familiar names in that participant list. So I am so glad that y'all are back. Don't forget, you can always share this episode with folks who need to know in case they weren't here. All right. So real quick, part of the reason I love chats is that I love to know more about you. So if you will drop in the chat your answer to this question, which feels most like you? You're full but still stretched. You avoid tuition decisions. Staffing feels impossible. You're kind of a reactor versus a planner. You know you enroll well and you know your enrollment numbers, but for some reason you just can't seem to make the profitability numbers work. So in the chat, just give me kind of a clue who's here, just so that I have an idea as I go through the session today, how to tailor. Oh, thank you, everybody. I love all of the feedback. That is just so, so helpful. All right. Whoops. Okay, let me just not press the chat button myself. All right. Now, I am about 90% sure that out of the 398 of you that are on, I probably have less than 10% of you who jumped into this industry because you were excited about business and numbers. And that the rest of you are so passionate. You are great teachers. You absolutely love what you do, and you have a heart for the children. Well, you know what? So did I, kind of. So, the rest of my backstory includes that before I opened my family home, I actually was a certified business analyst for the SBA. And it didn't take long for my heart in this industry to actually fall in my heart to the providers because I really wanted them to treat their business like a business. And so here I am, just a few years later, still with that passion. And you know what? The biggest thing that I want you to remember as we start looking at the data and the numbers today is that the children are not widgets. Okay? Your staff are not interchangeable. Every decision that you make over the course of a day comes back to and impacts the children in your program. So I know this. I was you. I feel you. And so here we go. So buckle up. We are definitely going to be taking some notes. And I promise, well, no, I'm not promising that. I was going to say it's not going to be too bad. But for some of you, you might be a little nervous. All right. So the real problem is that most of the leaders, you have a visibility problem. You might know exactly what's on your P&L. You might know exactly what those numbers mean. You might even, I don't know, get reports from your software that tell you about when your weight, when kids move up. And so you have an idea where and when you will have the ability to put new kids in classrooms. However, it matters because really what I want you to do and what I want you to think about is that every single decision you make over the course of the day can create financial pressure. And none of us like that. None of us, none of us, none of us. Okay. So here's the big question. Do you know the break-even point for every room? Now, let me define that for you because some folks will be like, oh, yeah, I know my numbers. It's not what I'm asking. Do you know the overhead for every classroom? So that includes the operation overhead. So the percentage of operation overhead plus the actual classroom expenses, which includes staff. And by taking that overhead number, do you know how many kids you have to have in that room for that room to pay for itself? Strictly break even, not a profit margin. Okay. I actually have a case study as we get towards the middle of today's workshop, and we will actually look at that in real time and why that's important to know. If you don't know that number, you are making decisions every single day, and you might as well have your eyes shut. Because although you think you're making the right decisions that are the right financial decisions, we will talk about how sometimes that gut instinct to take that child, to take that family, may not be the right one. Now, for those of you who said, yeah, I feel like I know my numbers and I just can't seem to get profitable, this is kind of an example where that happens because those blind decisions can be really, really expensive. And sometimes we do, well, what I like to call back of the envelope math. So we'll do the math numbers. Maybe we'll even do them in our head. We might even get out a calculator, or at least the app on our phone, and try to figure out some numbers. But we may not be looking at the actual numbers. We just are guessing. So in the chat, I want you to drop in what financial decision have you delayed this year? For some of you, this could be related to major equipment, like if you're looking to build a playground or you know your playground needs a refresh. Some folks, it might be deferred maintenance that you really need to do, but you just can't. Or because, things happen like, I don't know, an air conditioner goes out and you have to replace that. That's not optional. For some of you, it might be hiring an additional administrator. Some folks, it might be hiring an actual floater or a pool of substitutes. Okay. I love it. General maintenance. Oh, raises, raising tuition. Okay. So we'll talk about that raising tuition one. Hiring floaters, remodels. Oh, whew. All right. Playground maintenance. I see y'all. Okay. Thank you. Well, at least I know that everybody here is the same as most of the folks that I interact with in person at conferences across the state of Texas and around the country. So with that, let's talk room level visibility. What is each single classroom telling you? It's not just your center numbers, okay? I would suspect that, out of the 400 and let's see, if you take out staff, so roughly the 406, 407 of y'all who are in programs or work with programs and you're here today, I would suspect that most of you know your center numbers, right? You know your licensed capacity. You probably know your enrollment. Now, whether or not you actually know your enrollment or your full-time equivalents, I would say that's probably a 50-50 gamble because I'm guessing because I have clients like this who would give me their center numbers, they'd give me their enrollment numbers, and then I'd find out that the enrollment numbers they gave me included all their school age folks who were part-time. So that doesn't really work if we're trying to do any sort of budget forecasting, staff forecasting, because you do know you have to do budget forecasting before you can do staff forecasting, right? Because we got to be able to pay for them, right? So we love our teachers. We love the basics, but understanding the basics and not having the foundation of the why you need to know these numbers is kind of why we're here today. So why do you need to know these numbers? Because some rooms absolutely carry a center. I would suspect that most of you, that was or is your pre-K or out of school time, your school age classrooms. That for most states is actually, in most cities, is actually where their profit margin is. And it can be significant because of the ratios and what they can pay and even how they can retain the staff in those rooms. And then there's some rooms that really create pressure. They underperform, they create drag. It could be because maybe the square footage in the room is just off. And as an owner, you're like, I want the maximum number of kids in that room. But if you haven't done the break-even point, that room may never, ever, ever break even. Let me share an example with you. I have a client, and it's actually the director who was the client, and we were talking, and she had a room that the licensing organization said could have 6 infants. Now, in the state they were in, the ratio was 1 adult to 4 infants. But the owner was adamant that they had to have 6 infants in that room at all times. So it doesn't take a whole lot of math or a whole lot of pause for directors who are managing staffing budgets to go, I have to always have a second staff person in that room. So that's 2 staff paid for by 6 children, not the group size of 8 or 10, depending on your state. Okay. So I want you to think about those kinds of components because just because the room is full doesn't mean the room is profitable. That room was much closer to profitable at 4-1 because they only needed the 1 staff person. At 6-2, they're never, ever, ever going to come close. So these are the kind of things that you need to know per room, not just across your program. Do you know the enrollment? Do you know the ratio, payroll, your school capacity, and what is your margin? Now, here's what I want you to think about when you start thinking about capacity and licensing numbers, because we all know that this is true. If you have accreditation or any sort of quality program, chances are your numbers, your licensing numbers, are not actually your maximum capacity. A lot of times folks will be like, yeah, so I might be licensed for 140, but we do not like to go over 120. So then as you're doing your numbers across your program, do that in every room. Only think about your maximum capacity for the room, not to the licensed number. But you do have to ask yourself this question. Is it a preferred capacity because of staff capacity? Or is it a preferred capacity because of room arrangement? What makes that a preferred capacity? Could you have a conversation with somebody who is an expert in room design and lay out your room differently so that you can add maybe 1 or 2 more kids in that room? Can you train and support your staff so that your staff are comfortable adding 1 or 2 more kids to that room? Because that 1 or 2 more kids across each classroom is the difference between breaking even and being profitable. I don't care if you know your licensing numbers. I do care if you know your enrollment and your tour conversion numbers, but that's a different webinar. But I want you to know your room level break-even numbers. Because if you don't know those, you don't know, do you break even at 8 to 1? Or do you have to be at 2 to 18? Where can you break even? In the chat, real quick, drop in the chat if you absolutely know for sure, which means you've probably met me before, that you absolutely know every single break-even point in every room. If the answer is no, or you're not sure, drop that in the chat. And here's the reason. And it's not to shame anybody. It's not to embarrass anybody. I want you to see that you're not alone. Okay. There's a lot of folks that have no idea what your break-even point is, but yet every single day you are making decisions that are absolutely impacted by not knowing those numbers. All right. You guys all ready? I'm going to look at my clock because if I'm not careful, I'm not going to stay on time. And then I got Hannah jumping on and telling me I got to get off the queue. All right, so I want you guys right now in your program, because you guys are going to do this along with me, I want you for your toddler room. So first of all, you have to know your overhead, okay? Do you know your overhead? So let me tell you what goes into the overhead. Okay, so the overhead are all the administrative costs for running the building. That includes you as a director. That includes any other administrative staff. That includes everything related to the building, everything that is covered by everybody, right? So maybe you have a cook. Think about all your utilities, including things like the internet, your tech stack subscriptions, right? So all those go into the overhead. You can dump all those numbers, figure them out weekly, monthly, annually. I don't care, but you need to be able to know what that overhead number is as a whole, and then divide it by the number of rooms. Okay? So at your pest control, that's your subscriptions. Now, things like employees that are specific to a room, that stays with the room, and everything that goes with them benefits-wise, including professional development. Or you can put it in cross the program overhead. It kind of depends on how you separate it out on your P&Ls and in your accounting. So we have operational overhead, which includes upper level management, directors, those kinds of things, owner's draw. Second, you need the actual overhead for that classroom. That's the teacher cost. Full-time teachers, part-time teachers, floaters. If you have any sort of an enrichment program that you pay for. Now, if you have school agers and you have a bus driver who only drives the school agers, then I personally would probably put things like the bus, the driver, the bus's insurance, all into out of school time care or the after school or the school agers, whatever vocabulary choice you use. Okay. So I want you to think that through because that's really, really important. Now you have your overhead number. Now, again, make sure you're consistent across the board, whether or not you have figured that out weekly, monthly, or annually. Because if you start figuring out your overhead as monthly and then you put your tuition in as weekly, you're never going to feel like it's making any sense. So do it the way that works for you. Just a reminder, if you decide to go monthly, it isn't by 12. It's usually, it's not 4 weeks. It's like 4.2 if tuition comes in. So let's just say you put in your expenses as monthly and your overhead is monthly, but then your tuition is paid weekly. Remember that tuition is not 4 weeks in a month, it's 4.2. Okay, so same with your staff calculations. All right. I love me a good slide full of Legos because who doesn't have a blast using some Legos in a classroom? They probably aren't in your toddler classroom, but this got your attention. Okay. So you can't build the foundation in your program if you don't understand the numbers. I am talking about numbers on the teeny tiny level because the teeny tiny level is what creates the really big building. Okay. So if you don't know your room numbers, you're going to have a hard time making your bigger budget work. Okay. You need to know your capacity for the room. That's not necessarily your license number. How many do you have enrolled? What is your staff? And what is your ratio? So these are just arbitrary numbers. So if these numbers don't come anywhere close to yours, that's okay. I just put numbers in. I want you to fill this out for you. Okay, so I want you to go back to your toddler room, pick any toddler room. I want you to identify its capacity. How many toddlers are enrolled? How many staff? And what is your state's ratio as far as adult child maximum group size? So in other words, again, the capacity, you might be able to in the room have more than 12, but maybe for you because of accreditation or whatever, maybe that's not the number you're using. Okay. So you're going to figure this out for you. So you've figured out the overhead, right? Operations overhead, classroom specific staffing overhead. And then you're going to need these numbers. Because if you go back, oops, there we go. Now that you know that overhead number, and you know your tuition rate for that age group, you're going to divide your overhead number by your weekly tuition or monthly. Again, make sure you're doing it apple to apple. Okay. Whatever that big number was, so if your big number was 2,500, and in this case I did 2,500 as my weekly expense divided by 275, I'm going to need 10 because I can't have 9 in a portion kids, right? I'm going to need 10 kids just to break even. That means that difference between child 11 and child 12 is where my profit lies. So as a director, if your staff are going, no, 10 is all I can handle, and your owner is going, but I want 2 more, this is the reason. Because the last time I checked, when the AC went out, the directors aren't the one paying the bill. I had a director this week who had to replace the air conditioning in her program, and it was $31,000. Okay, that's a lot of money for an owner to just come up with. Okay, so when your owner is asking you to put that other 1 or 2 kids in a classroom, this is why they're asking, because you've gone from just breaking even to the difference of the profit margin. Okay. Now, in this particular classroom, right, the current payroll was for 2 staff members. and the ratio was 6 to 1. So I could go to 12 without any problem without having to change my staff. I have seen great directors make the decision that because they added 2 more kids, they're also going to now give them a little floater. Now you've screwed up the budget again. That room is now no longer profitable because now you've hired a staff person to take on a few hours every day, and you didn't do the math in that room, and you didn't adjust that room's overhead. Right? So if you just have 2 staff, that's one set of payroll. If you have 2.5, that's a different set of payroll. Okay. Now, I am not calling anybody out, so if this feels a little too close to home, I don't really apologize. I'm hoping that you're writing notes. Okay. At an enrollment of 10, payroll with 2 staff, in this particular case, the margin was positive. Is it for you? Okay, absolutely. So I pulled up the chat real quick because I wanted folks to think this through. So there are some things in there like subsidy rates, right? So again, so when you start doing the math about the tuition and what is the break-even point, make sure you're using real tuition costs, not your published rates. If your published rates are higher than your subsidy rates, use the subsidy rate. Because again, I've seen this happen where people are like, I did what you told me to do. I've got 10 kids in here. I should be breaking even, but I still can't pay the bills. But if you go back a step and you look at the tuition rate they're dividing by their published rate or their cash pay rate, not what they're actually getting reimbursed. Okay, that's where that whole discount thing, that's the end. I'll get there later. Okay, sorry. I grabbed my soapbox, except it's not with me. All right. We love toddlers. We want them to be safe. The parents came to you because they want you and expect you to keep their child safe. However, remember, we didn't get into the business to lose money. Even churches that do this as a mission, even nonprofits, you aren't supposed to be writing grants just to make your operational expenses. I love a good passion project, but even nonprofits, churches, other organizations, you still need to have the ability to break even. Okay. Now, if you want to write a grant for something really cool, you want to get a new playground, you want to write grants for your professional development, I'm there. But you need to still know your numbers. You still need to know how many butts you need to have in the seat to break even and what is your profit margin. Okay. Now, let's just think this through. If I have a family show up and they have a toddler and they have 2 other kids, I got a family who shows up and says, hey, tomorrow I want to start with 3 kids. If you think the answer is yes, you would absolutely take them, no questions asked. I want you to drop a yes in the chat. If you would at least take a pause, I want you to say pause or no. So right now, drop in the chat. Are you taking this family of 3 kids immediately, no questions asked, or are you pausing? Oh, I like all the pausing. Okay. That means I got some people that are thinking. I got some folks that are thinking. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes, the staffing is key. Okay. But more times than not, I get directors that go, yes, or I get owners that are like, why would we not take those 3 kids? Well, here's the thing. If you've got 2 of those rooms already at ratio, which means you now have to put another staff person in, and just because, and then the third one has space with its current staffing, because again, it's not just because you have the ratio space, like just because you have the square footage, it's do you have the staff? And for a lot of us, this is currently a big issue. I have met programs all over the country that cannot take themselves to preferred or licensed capacity because they don't have the staff to do that. Okay. But in this particular situation, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You need to think through room A, room B, and room C. You need to make sure you are clear on what happens to any profit, staffing or otherwise, related to adding those kids into those 3 classrooms. Okay. Adding 1 child means adding 1 staff member, but I want you to think this through. Adding 1 staff member in ratio is not just a 40-hour week, and it's not just their pay rate. How many hours is that classroom open? So if that classroom is open 60 hours, it's actually a 60 hours worth of staff. And if you're paying them $15 an hour, it is costing you between $18.75 and $21 an hour, depending on if you are a workers' comp state required, if you have any other sort of benefits. That means it's going to cost you over $1,200 a week, over $65,000 a year if you have to add that 1 more staff person for 1 more kid. Now, last time I checked, I am about 90% sure that none of you charge $65,000 a year for your toddler spots. If you do, I'm coming to work for you. So let me know, drop in the chat, you got a spot for me. Okay, but I am about pretty sure that none of you charge that. So if you weren't a pause and you were an automatic yes, this is the reason for that pause. First of all, do you have the staff person, right? If you enroll a child and you have to add a staff person, then your margin shrinks. Okay? This is where that 1 enrollment decision triggers a chain of financial consequences. Now, again, most of you probably came into the industry because you love kids, and even more of you probably did an awesome job as a teacher and you were promoted. But somehow along the line, nobody sat down and said, hey, I recognize you've had like hundreds of hours in how to be an awesome teacher. And I'm just going to give you, you're going to go into the director immersion program. Like I'm just going to give you all the stuff and hope you figure it out. So, language immersion is very different than management immersion. None of us really like management immersion, but you probably weren't taught how to manage staff, how to manage budgets, how to manage marketing, and how to manage parents, let alone then now trying to figure out how to train adults because you were a really good teacher of toddlers. Last time I checked, my adults and my toddlers learn differently. Okay? Now, if you have taken that family of 3, you now have 2 rooms that need that 3rd staff person. Okay, so all of a sudden your margins went from positive and they were green and everybody was happy to red. They're not even yellow. This is full-blown red. Think of it as a traffic light. Okay, green means you get to go. Yellow, okay, we need to be a little cautious, right? And the red means to stop. If you hear me tell you that your room is now in the red, I'm hoping that this means that you understand you have to stop. Do not take that family. But I have 1 opening. You have 1 opening and now you have to hire 2 staff. It isn't whether or not can we enroll them, it's what happens when we do. Okay? What would you do? Now that you've heard me talk this through, what are you going to do? Drop in the chat. Are you going to enroll them or not enroll them? Or are you still in the, I don't know, I haven't actually thought this through before phase, like I'm still thinking? So you can give me a little thinky, little gift in the chat. You can do whatever you want. I just want you to start to think through, not sure, got that, no. Okay. Now, I got a secret. Okay. And I'm sure that most of you would love to have a little secret. And I'm sure that most of you really don't want to watch that family of 3 walk out the door. Okay. You've taken the time, you've answered. Now, here's how you prevent some of this. Okay. When they call to book a tour, make sure you ask how many kids and you ask their ages so that you can literally start to develop a plan immediately before they walk in the door. Because if you're going to take the time to give them a tour, you need to figure out, A, when are they starting at your program? Okay. It shouldn't be an if, it's a when. Those families are probably only visiting 2 or 3 programs. Gone are the days where they are checking out 5 programs. They have checked out 6 or 7 programs online. They have decided they're going to come face to face with 2 or 3 of you. If you get them in the building, the answer needs to be a yes. Okay. Again, whole other soapbox and whole other workshop. All right. Here's my preferred suggestion for you. Know that when they say yes, think to yourself, do I currently have any substitutes or floaters that I might be able to promote into a full-time position or 3/4 time position or in that classroom? Okay, maybe I have one. Okay, well, if I do have one, well, then it's not an option about whether or not I have the staff person. It's whether or not I can get some more butts in that seats, right? How many more kids do I need for that to break even? Is this a time of the year where I generally get a lot of inquiries for that age group? Okay. When do the parents in your community generally enroll? Hopefully, that is something you know. If it is not something you've tracked, go pull your CRM software, go look, go have conversations with previous staff, go figure out when people enroll. It's usually January and somewhere between August and September. And a lot of times we lose kids May, June, because we do this thing like graduate them. Okay. May, June, and December. Now, if this family walks in the door and it's the first week of December, what are the chances that you might actually lose a kid and therefore they're going to fill a spot? So that keeps it profitable. Or you're not losing a kid, but you're probably not going to get anybody walking off the street, knocking on your door. Those are the kind of things that you need to be able to be clear and understand. Now, what's great is if you have that substitute, you know you've got 3 weeks. You've told that person, you've said, hey, I can take little Johnny tomorrow, but I'm going to have to put Cooper on the wait list. Is it okay if Cooper starts in 2 weeks? And if they say yes, say great. I just need to make sure I've got a qualified teacher who's ready to go in that classroom. Most parents can accept 1, 2, maybe even 3 weeks. But remember, you should have been doing the math at the phone call, right? At the phone call, you should have known, can you take Marie, Cooper, and little Johnny? That's entirely up to you. Only you know the answer to that, right? If you aren't always hiring and you don't always have substitutes and floaters coming in the building, then you're in a whole different place than somebody who does that. So you've had the tour, the family's excited, you get the youngest one in the toddler classroom immediately, you're good to go. The next 2, you got to figure out as much the staffing as the butts in the seats. Now, hopefully you are not the only administrator, but that depends on the size of your program, right? If you've got under 50 kids, 1 administrator. If you've got over 50 kids, it's roughly 50 kids per administrator. So if you've got a program with about 100 kids, there should be 2 of you. 1 of you, go out, market, tour, put butts in the seats for that specific age group or 2 age groups. If there's only 1 of you, divide and conquer. Take today or the rest of this week. So tomorrow morning, wake up going, okay, I got to have my contingency plan. I have to know what to do if this happens. Okay? Does that make sense? There is a reason why there are all kinds of tools, right? We've got, we can market everywhere, but we also have companies that flipped and changed. Twitter is now no longer Twitter. Netflix is no longer sending a CD in the mail. You might have to do something different to make sure that you stay profitable. Okay? All of us have dealt with a time or two where we've had to change who or what we are because we want to stay profitable. Okay? I want you to have better operational options. The best way to do that is to understand the math, but it's also where that math can get complicated. I don't care how much you've spent on awesome systems, but if they're not implemented, it doesn't matter. If you can't look at the numbers and know how to make a decision, I don't care that your accountant gives you a profit and loss statement. You need to know at the room level. You can sit in all kinds of workshops, but if you never implement what you've learned in a workshop, it doesn't really matter. So you're here. There are over 430 of you that are not related to me, not a friend of mine, and you don't work for ECI or Playground. So I'm hoping that the 430 of you go tomorrow or at the absolute latest Monday and start to figure out your break-even numbers, because what's the point of coming to this workshop and spending 90 minutes of your day if you're not going to take the information and implement it? Okay? Now, nobody wants to stress out their staff. So after you've had the phone call and you've scheduled the tour, and you know that 2 of those kids are going to cause those classrooms to go over a little, have a conversation with your teachers. Be transparent. Say, hey, I know that right now you're at capacity. I've got a family coming today with 3 kids. If they choose, when they choose to enroll, we will add a 3rd teacher to your classroom. Don't panic that I expect you to take this child with your current staff. Have that conversation with them, okay? Over the course of your attempt and your concentrated effort in putting butts in that classroom seats, give them that floater for the next couple of weeks, because that floater will now become a familiar face. Because what happens when you add a kid to a classroom? Sometimes it can get a little chaotic. But if you've got the other 12 all calmed down because they know they've got 3 people that they know, like, and trust, then adding that one more person is not going to be a problem, because they've got their people, and their people show up, and they're people that they can trust. Now, this is my favorite secret. Okay? So I don't like to ever say no. Sometimes we can staff, but sometimes I get that some communities, that's just really, really hard. Now, a lot of us have rooms that we've identified by age groups, the 2s, the 3s, toddlers, whatever. Go find you some animals or elements. Go find you something to call those rooms that aren't ages. Because here's the thing. The parents, they only know whatever you tell them. And literally for centuries, children have grown up in multi-age groups. Most of you right now can probably identify your kids in your class that you've got some 2s that are a little more 3 than 2, and you've got some 3s that are a little more 2 than 3. But why? Who decided that only 3s can be in the 3s and that only 2s can be in the 2s? I am guessing that if you actually look at the ratios in your state standards, you have the ability to do mixed age classrooms. Most states, it's between 18 and 24 months as far as a range. That doesn't always mean that that's perfect, but it does mean that if you've got some toddlers and some preschoolers and some infants, most of you already do this every morning and at the end of every day. So why do we get so stressed out during the rest of the day and we think that we have to put those 2s with the 2s and our 3s with the 3s? instead of figuring out, well, if we put the 2s and the 3s together and we've got 2 teachers, everybody's happy. Okay. Take a look at that. Play with those numbers. If you have to, seriously, get out some board game pieces. You know, if you've ever played Sorry, go find the little Sorry pieces. Go play with them and mix them up. Figure out how can you do this and still be in ratio. Have happy teachers. Now, don't pair 2 teachers together that don't like each other, because that's just asking for a whole other level of a headache. That is not what I'm asking for. What I am suggesting is that you consider this. Okay. Now, some of you are going, oh, I definitely can't math that. Like, I already hurt your head over there on break-even points. And now I'm telling you, well, you know, just take your 18-month to your 35-month and just make them one classroom. You can. There isn't one state or territory. Now, our international folks, I don't 100% know enough about your regulations, but there is a way in every single state to do that. I've already got folks who do that. I've got some folks who are saying, absolutely do it. Okay. Does anyone have a good training to take on how to talk to parents about the benefits of mixed age groups? Okay, so Megan, I'm actually going to make this suggestion to you. And you might just ask the parents if they already know what the ages are of their classrooms. Okay. My favorite are when people go, oh, I'm looking at you and I'm looking at a Montessori program. If I've got Montessori programs in the chat, they probably can, again, agree with me, right? Most Montessori schools already function this way. Okay. They're almost always 3 to 5. Have you actually looked at a public school kindergarten class? Chances are they are already a mixed age group. Part of it's based on birthdays, right? But part of it's also parents get the choice that if they have a child who they think maybe isn't quite ready, they don't have to put them in right away. Okay? You know those one-room schoolhouses? Okay? If you've heard of micro schools, private schools do it every single day. Yes, they might have a 3rd grade, but 3rd grade doesn't necessarily say, hi, I'm a 7 or an 8-year-old. Okay. But yes, I can get you that training. So when I give you my contact information at the end, Megan, just to answer your question, I would be happy to get you some training on how to have those conversations with parents. I really was going there. All right. I've actually seen programs that actually move people up every 6 months as it is. So why? I've also been to programs where the teachers loop. What does that mean? That means that kid's got that teacher for 2 years. Works really, really well in immersion program, pretty common in immersion programs. Okay. Now, your state ratios matter. So I am not telling you to do something different than your state tells you you can do. Just making sure you guys are all clear on that. That's my caveat on there. Okay. But if you don't have your classroom level data, you aren't going to understand how to impact and control those margins. You and the owner, leadership, whoever, I mean, it may all be you. You might be the one with the 14 hats on. If you are, I love you and we're so glad that you're here. And so are the kids and the parents in your program. But let's see what we can do to make sure that you're taking the right path that works for you. But you know what? Numbers don't have emotion. So those of you who are a little not sure about this, it's because you're looking at these from an emotion standpoint versus a number standpoint. How many of you, and I saw people earlier, and I'm pretty sure you guys could all give me an emoji. If you really are excited about raising tuition because, I don't know, the gallon of milk is no longer $2, it's now $4, you know, give me a heart if you think you love the concept of raising tuition. Okay, so I've got some folks who wants to actually do it and tell the parents. Okay, probably not nearly as many of you. Okay, now I've got some folks who've already jumped off, so I figured those are the folks that are like, nope, I'm done with the numbers. But for the rest of you, where in your center are you making decisions without visibility? In other words, you don't actually know what it costs you. How many of you have a commercial kitchen? You have a cook. That cook comes in and works 2 hours a day. And meanwhile, you have a $20,000 or $15,000 gorgeous kitchen. Okay. I love those who don't have a problem raising tuition. That is awesome. Okay. Absolutely. So I agree with those who said, we should be meeting kids at where they are developmentally. Yes, but if we've named all our rooms by ages, it's harder to do that. Okay. So think about what room you are making decisions without visibility. Do you know what your per meal cost is? Okay. Right? Are you just doing menus because somebody gave you a menu and then you realize that the kids aren't eating the food? Are the kids not eating the food because it doesn't match what they eat culturally? Okay. We have to look at that in every single room, in every single space. And most of you know this, right? Like you're in that space 24/7. You pay the rent and the utilities on it 24/7. If you've got a full-blown commercial kitchen, kick up your inspection a notch and rent it out on the weekends to food trucks or to caterers. Make a big difference in your budget. All right, so real quick, I want to talk about the other blind spots that are quietly draining your margin that you may not think about. Some of them are, and again, this could be its own workshop. Okay, discounts. Any sort of discount, staff discount, military discount, sibling discount, major employer discount, quality improvement programs. Okay. Again, if you are dividing by 275, but you have one kid that brings in 275 and everybody else it's 225, go do your break-even point based on 225. Scheduling. We do not have to have everybody work 40 hours a week in most states. Okay. Look at when you really need the coverage. When do you not need the coverage? You can also get parents to commit to a schedule. We did this in the 80s and the 90s. This was very common practice. A parent signed up, they were going to be there from 6 to 4. If they showed up at 4:30, they got a late fee. Why? Because I only staffed based on who was going to be there at 4 o'clock, not if they wander in. Okay? Make sure you're looking at when you actually need the staff and then keep them for when you actually need them. If you are keeping people because you want to, or it would be nice to have, those nice to haves are going to break your budget. Okay. Under enrollment and staffing patterns. Okay. Kind of all comes back to that same thing. If you haven't done, again, that micro analysis of a classroom, do you know what everybody actually pays in a classroom? I worked with a client and he told me the rate for his toddler classroom. And I said, great, let's pull up your books. And so then he pulled in his books and realized that he only had one family out of 7 actually paying what he in his mind thought was his toddler rate. Because some of those parents, the rates never actually got raised, even though they had planned to do it. So if you are publishing a rate and you're telling new families one rate, but yet you still have families paying an old rate, at what point in time do you increase that? And are you still making your budget off of the new rate? Okay. Discounts are expenses. They just wear different clothes. Okay. What is happening in your classroom? What's happening in your school? What do your parents know? We've all been to lecture halls. We've all sat here. We've all been educated. Now it's time to implement. If you can't figure out how to get your ducks in a row, then you're not going to be around in August. Okay. So I would suspect out of the 420 of you that are left, that there are some of you that are dangerously close to not being around in September. Well, that doesn't do your parents any good. It doesn't do your staff any good. It doesn't do you any good. So right now, today, figure out how to stop hemorrhaging. If that means you have to let some staff go or cut hours, have a conversation with your staff and be transparent. Have you actually had a conversation with the parents that you like in the classrooms that need more butts in the seats and say, hey, Does Cooper have any friends that he does soccer with who might want to come to our program? If you've got any people who you could refer, that would be great. Okay. Those little misalignments that go unnoticed, like again, that classroom of 7 toddlers, you had one person paying the actual rate you thought people were being charged. That means you have 6 kids that are not paying anywhere from $40 to $100 a month. That doesn't take long for that to be a compounded cost. Okay. Now, real quick, this is my disclosure. I'm going to give you a how you can start to turn some of that visibility in, because the better information you have gives you an opportunity to make better decisions. And we all know you are already making hundreds of decisions before lunch. And most of those decisions probably happened before your feet were on the ground because you had parents and staff already texting you first thing in the morning. Now, here's the disclaimer. This is a free tool that I created. Okay, it's called centeriq.io. It's the decision intelligence tool. So if you go to centeriq.io, you can jump on this for free. This is the demo that you're looking at. Okay, over on the left-hand side, you'll see the very first thing is break even. It's free. You can use it. You don't have to, but it will give you a visual representation once you set up your school. So you still got to put in all the overhead numbers, right? But it'll walk you through and it'll ask you and you can fill it in and it does the math. You don't even have to do the math. But because it's free, I'm not trying to sell it to you, but you can do all of this also with spreadsheets. You can give all of this information and ask your accountant to give it to you. But sometimes these numbers literally change every day. Okay. Now, my goal is to help you as the leaders understand your room level break even clearly. I want you to be able to make those decisions with just the facts. If you don't know your enrollment per room, your payroll per room, your margin per room, you are going to have leaks that you aren't going to know how to solve. The numbers are already talking. The question is, are you listening? Good childcare decisions are never only about the number. They are about the people and systems behind the number. As a director, I realize that your 100% goal about everything are the parents and staff. Owners, I do understand, believe it or not, that really what you're looking at is the financials, right? You're looking at the break-even point. If you're an owner and a director, you struggle with this every single day. If you are somebody who supports owners and directors because you're a vendor or you are a quality improvement leader, and some of you folks, I saw you in the participant list, so I know who you are and I know you're here, right? You need to know this too, right? I'm so glad that you're here because now you can share the information with the folks who you partner with and work with. All right, so a lot of times I get people who try to figure out how to get a hold of me. I'm giving you 2 websites, katewoodwardyoung.me and childcareconversations.com. You can also pull out your phone. We're going to practice that QR code because you're going to need it here in just a sec. Practice your phone, practice your QR code. This takes you to my LinkedIn profile. Go connect with me, inbox me, let me know if you've got questions. I am happy to support, give you resources, links, whatever it is that you might need. I will be back in a few months, sometime in September. I think Hannah will know the answer. And we will be continuing the conversation behind the ways to use the data and the numbers, not just the fact that you need to know them. So I have enjoyed chatting with you all. We are going to open it up for questions and answers. I am going to stop sharing so that Hannah and Sasha can jump on.
Kate, you
Hello,
can keep
how are you doing, Sasha?
I'm good. You can keep that slide up if you want so folks can access it while we spend the next few minutes going through Q&A. And I would encourage everyone to submit your questions as we get through some of these.
And drop them over in Q&A, not in the chat. That way we can actually
Honestly, either or. Like
either
at
or.
this
Okay.
point, it's slowed down. Sometimes it goes crazy, but right now it's slowed down a little bit. So if folks wherever your questions are, I will find them for you. Um, well, let's jump into it. So someone was I'm gonna butcher this name, but someone wrote in and asked, how can we schedule children when hours of operation are posted from certain time to certain time? Do we suggest accommodating and charging separate for like specific schedules?
So a lot of this is you have to sit down and kind of plan it out and have conversations with your parents. But it's a matter of having those open dialogues with parents. We've all had the parent who drops the kid off and the kid is there for 13, 14 hours a day. And I listen to educators and owners talk about the frustration level all the time. So first thing is you're going to have to change your standard operating procedures. You don't change your hours of operation and you change your internal language. So for example, when you have conversations over the phone, you can tell people, hey, this is how we operate. Our parents sign up for a shift. That's when their kids come. So their kids can come, 8 to 4, 8 to 6, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Like it's really not, it isn't difficult, but you have a lot of back end work that you need to do first. Like you need to know yourself. I wouldn't change my rates and I wouldn't change my posted hours, but it does mean that your teachers need to know, hey, these 3 kids are supposed to leave at this time. And again, it's a transition, right? So you give parents some leeway over time. But the biggest thing is starting with an all parent meeting. Do not make this decision in a silo and don't just roll it out to staff and parents and nobody knows. Okay. Help them understand that it's because you've chosen to do this versus raising the rates. At that point in time, believe it or not, parents can do the math themselves. They're like, so if I pick my child up at 4:30 instead of waiting until 6:30, then she's not going to raise my tuition. I'm going to figure out how to get there at 4:30 because I get off work at 3. Does that make some sense?
Absolutely. Um, Jamie wrote in, she asked, or she, I guess, stated that overtime is killing me, but I can't get enough staff to cover. I know you have strong opinions on overtime.
I do have strong opinions on overtime. And part of it is because back in the day, right? So when I was a director and we ran 4 schools, we also ran a substitute service. I firmly believe in always be hiring. Most of you probably, again, weren't trained in staffing, staff development, interviewing, and hiring. So if you're only ever doing this when you need to, it's going to be hard. Okay. It really is. It's going to be hard. So if you're doing it all the time, you get better and better at it because you're getting practice. So first of all, always be hiring, even if it's just for floaters and staff. Right now, it's summer. Okay. So in case you're watching this as a rerun, right now, if you are near a community pool, a YMCA, or anything where you have young people who have paid their own money to get trained to be a lifeguard, why are you not out there the end of July recruiting them? Because I want you to hear me. They've already got their CPR. They've already got their first aid. They had 30 hours of professional development just between May and August. They already know that's important. They're already used to wearing a uniform. They already are used to some chaos. Okay. I recruited 75% of our substitutes from swimming pools and lifeguards, and we had a pager and a landline. Programs who do that find that also successful, but I get a lot of people who blow me off and go, oh, that'll never work. If you've never tried, if you are only putting things up on Indeed or on Facebook and you don't like the people you're getting, give it a try. Just saying. So yes, but you need to have more people, right? That's the easiest way to get rid of overtime. And you are too expensive. You should not be covering bathroom breaks and, lunch breaks. You need a floater to do that. Go find yourself a retired grandma. Have you asked everybody who comes to your program, do they have a grandma? Okay. Do they have a grandma who lives in town? For those of you who normally are used to seeing my business partner, my cousin, she sold her last school to somebody who started as a substitute who was a grandma of one of the kids in her program. 20 years later, she bought the school. She's now paid for the school 20 years later, and she is still there and she loves it. Right? Okay, I will get off that soapbox. Sorry, Sasha.
Always be hiring. Okay, Lisa writes in, and this is actually a good question about the overhead piece and how to think about calculating it. If your classroom or if a classroom is not open 52 weeks, like for Lisa's case here, it's more like 35. Do you change how you apply the overhead costs to that room, or are you charging it for the entire room for the entire year, like every other room, because that space is
Okay,
not really used by
so
any other group?
okay, so I'm going to suspect, Lisa, that this is probably a pre-K classroom that only handles year-round, like school year stuff. And so let me give you how I would answer that because where's that overhead going to go the rest of the time? Right? So, for example, you only use the building 6 to 6 Monday through Friday, but you're paying for the building 24/7. You're still paying utilities and you're still paying the overhead. Now, if you want to, you can finagle it or you can go, okay, so here's my break even for this. But I would change your numbers and divide it instead of by a 52 weeks if you were doing weekly. I would probably adjust it for the 35 weeks is what I would do because you need to be able to pay for that space. Unless you have another way. Maybe you can rent out that space, that classroom, or maybe you can have a specific age group that only uses that classroom in the summer. Maybe you offer a kindergarten bridge program that's open to anybody in the community and it uses that classroom. That way, that classroom overhead is picked up.
Someone actually wrote in and said maybe this is actually an interesting way of using that space, but Jamie wrote in and said that they're considering getting like offering perks for a monthly fee, like things that won't really cost her a
Mhm.
ton. So like date night to watch the kids or just something 2 to 3 hours a month and rotate staff, new
Yeah, so
staff that
Jamie,
are.
I actually suggest that and have some clients who do that as a membership. So basically, parents can join as a membership. Everybody's used to a membership, everybody has a subscription. And so it's a subscription that they pay on top of tuition, and it's not required by anybody. And it is something like 17.99 or 22.99, whatever makes sense in your community. And maybe it's good for date nights, maybe it's good for priority of summer camp registrations. Maybe you do some special events around Christmas, as far as you'll do a Saturday morning Christmas watch for the kids. So that way, again, it's regular. Parents still have to sign up, but they don't pay anything additional. So absolutely, um, I, I can do a whole. That's a whole. I got a whole webinar, or it's actually a whole workshop, but we have a whole workshop on that. Yeah. So.
For some of your clients that have had like, they've looked at the numbers for the first time and realized like, oh wow, like, looking at especially on the room level analysis, what have been like the most successful or not even successful, but like what have been like the most like sweeping changes that you've seen someone do in terms of restructuring how they staff and how they schedule their different programs and even like the programs that are offered? Like what's been like the most dramatic switch up that you've seen?
So I think the most dramatic, immediate impact is those mixed age classrooms, because I have a lot of clients that come to me when they're already at, excuse my non-daycare words, the oh shit level, right? Like they already are hemorrhaging horribly. And so the biggest thing we do is literally merge two classrooms and we get rid of a staff person or we adjust a staff person's hours to being part-time instead of full-time. And if you can take out a full human and still have all of the kids in ratio and everybody's happy, that has always been the quickest turnaround, because it takes literally no time. Like you can do it tomorrow.
A lot of folks are talking about also using tuition increases as helping sort of cover cost of care and rising costs in general. I know there's oftentimes a real fear around raising tuition, like losing
Mhm.
families, being seen as unaffordable as like, just a general reputation. How do you typically advise on navigating that tension between pricing for sustainability, but then also maintaining that relationship with your community and with your families?
Yeah. So there's two schools of thought. There was one program I worked with, and I totally cracked up that they even reached out for any purpose. But they always have had a wait list, right? So always, which I know that a lot of us don't have that experience. But basically, every time she gets her wait list has over 10 kids, she knows it's time to raise the rates. So that is one perspective. My suggestion, especially if you have not raised rates regularly, if you are not a program that raises annually, and maybe it's been since 2020 since you had any real rate increase, have a conversation with the parents. Again, I would never do this kind of stuff in silo. I don't care if you're the owner, I don't care if you're the director, I don't care if you're the owner director. Please do not raise the rates without having a conversation with the parents. 90% of the time, if you tell the parents what it costs, I guess there's a number you need to know. What does it cost you per head to run that child through the day? If it costs you $300 a week and you're only charging $275, let the parents know. Because most of the time, the parents don't want you to go out of business. Okay. The parents want you to be there. If you're not sure the parents do or the community does, if you guys are up for another set of math, here's one for you that might hurt your head a lot. But I want you to think about how many, let's go with a program with 100 kids because it's just easy for me to math. If you have 100 kids in your program, and let's say half of those kids have two parents who go to work. Okay. So you now have 150 people in your community who get to go to work every day, plus your own staff, because you're open. And let's just say that the average salary or the average enrollment, okay, of people in your community is $40,000. Okay. So I might need somebody to math for me real quick because I'm not sure I can do this number in my head. But if you had 150 times 40,000, who wants to give me that number?
6 million.
Okay. So your program is responsible for $6 million of revenue into your community. And if you aren't part of your Chamber of Commerce, go share that number with your workforce board and with your Chamber of Commerce. You will be surprised how quickly somebody will find you an extra $25 per kid to keep your door open. If you have a major employer and you're not really sure your parents can handle another $25, I'm based in Texas. I have schools all over the border, and we all know, well, most of you probably are familiar with this person, and he builds cars and rocket ships, and he has his own little town in this county. Okay, so SpaceX has its own town. I have a program that had a lot of parents who worked there. They were afraid to raise the rates. I said, I bet if you walked across the street and had a conversation with that major employer and said, look, I'm going to close my doors, which means 50 of your employees won't have care unless unless we figure out how to work together. Because the county was out of money. So if the county's out of money for reimbursements for low income, go to your employer. Do you have a three-legged stool, or are you trying to operate on a two-sided wobbly ladder as far as a revenue source for your communities, for your families? But you have to know what it costs you every day per child.
Raphael writes in, yes, Kate, for each single classroom costs, excluding staff and classroom specific expenses, can we assign the costs per square feet of that single classroom?
I mean, you can. I mean, there are people who do it that way. I usually just make it easy on people and just say just divide by 10 classrooms, because it's less probably about square footage and maybe more per kid, or licensed capacity, because maybe your infant room really should be based on your licensed capacity of 8 versus an equal across the board. So yes, you can make it as exact as you want to. I operate generally in this particular workshop kind of in a divided by 10, or the number of classrooms. Absolutely.
Cool. And as we start to wrap up, I'm curious if you were to leave everyone with the most realistic thing that they could do this week or next week to start applying this like room level break even mentality and thinking in their program, what would it be? Where would you start?
I would start by picking the one room that you are finding that you're having a lot of turnover in, either kid turnover or staff turnover, because that's already a room that you're focused on. Make sure you know the break even number for that room. And here's one: have difficult conversations with the staff who you shouldn't still have there. And if there are parents who shouldn't be there, don't be afraid to fire them.
There you go. Well, Kate, I really, really appreciate your time today. This was a really helpful follow-up. For those that didn't watch the first version of this, I'd highly recommend doing that. Maybe like the next couple minutes, Hannah, if you don't mind, finding the link to the previous webinar we did. We'll throw it in the chat. We also have a wonderful book that Kate is holding up that actually myself and Daniel, the one of the co-founders of Playground, we co-authored alongside Kate and Carrie, and I have a whole chapter where I specifically talk about marketing numbers and KPIs. And so, if any folks here are thinking about scalable growth and doing it in a way where you're not just burning all your money on Google or Facebook ads, I would recommend you check out that book. There's a ton of other really good content in there, not just that chapter, but it is specifically focused on the actual numbers and metrics that you can track that power the health and overall success of your childcare program. Maybe if we can find that link for that also, that'd be super helpful, Hannah. Um, Kate, thanks so much for jumping in again. This is so much fun. You always have so much to share, your wealth of knowledge, and this platform wouldn't be what it is today without the generous time and effort of presenters like you. And so, on behalf of myself and Hannah, but also everyone in the audience, just very grateful. So, thanks again for making the time.
I'm going to stay on and answer questions, but I'm going to turn myself off.
Okay, that sounds good. For everyone else, stick around just a few minutes. We'll get you out of here by the half-hour mark. Kate's going to be lurking in the Q&A and in the chat. So if you have questions, keep throwing them in there. She'll be great at answering them. And I just want to do a few things here. I want to do a quick word from Playground. I am going to announce a couple upcoming webinars that you won't want to miss. We'll do our prize winners and then get you your certificates and be on our very happy, merry way to enjoy the rest of this wonderful Wednesday. For those that missed it in the beginning, Playground is the company behind early childhood investigations. We are an app and a website that helps grow and run childcare programs and specifically understand a lot of the core financials that you then are assessing the overall health of your business. So it is a great tool to make sure that you are centralizing all of your finances, whether it's expenses leaving the business or revenue coming in. It is one place that you can then pull everything out and make your analysis on top of. So if you want to learn a little bit more, you could scan the QR code in the bottom left corner. We do all kinds of things. So like I said before, we literally run your payroll for you. We do your marketing, billing, attendance, communication, just all the things that you need. And what's big here is making sure that all of your data is in one place. You should have one source of truth for everything in your program. As you start to take a good look at the health of your business, it's really important to have reliable data. Because if you are pulling your CACFP records here and your payroll records here and your credit card statements here, it starts to erode at the trust that you build in actually understanding what is correct and what is not. And so having a true system of record like Playground helps you get that peace of mind knowing exactly where all those numbers stand, the reliability of it. And the idea also is that we're taking out all the chaos of daily operations so that you can focus on these bigger picture moments, the strategic financial planning that otherwise wouldn't happen if you were bogged down in the chaos of the day to day. There's still going to be chaos, but hopefully a little bit less of it. So if you're curious about learning a little bit more, you could scan the QR code in the bottom right corner. There's a link in the chat from Hannah as well that we're happy to share. And you can take a quick look with our team. Now, um, next week, actually in 2 weeks, on July 8th, Monique Reynolds from Quality Care for Children is joining to talk about building tuition and billing policies that work. And so this is sort of like once you've done the analysis that based on the skills that you've developed in Kate's webinar, Monique is going to come in and talk through the actual policies that you can start putting in place and implementing when it comes to making changes, whether it's increasing your rates or being stricter about your collections or whatever it might be. Monique has helped guide hundreds of programs, especially in the Atlanta and the Georgia area. So if you're curious to learn a bit more about what policies actually work in practice, would love for you to come. You could scan the QR code or click on the link in the chat as well. And this one is going to be really important to making sure that we're keeping your program financially stable. So how do we set these clear policies from day one? How do we collect those fees without stress and without conflict? Then on the 22nd, Debbie Osborne and Tom Rawlings from YSO Academy are joining to talk a little bit more about building a child protection policy that actually works in practice. So we're going to be walking through how to bring the right people to the table, how to research the current standard of care, auditing your existing policies, and making child safety a livable, trainable part of your organizational culture. So this is at the end of July on the 22nd, and you could scan the QR code to join or click on the link in the chat. Or, of course, go to ecewebinars.com/child-protection. And finally, Mia Pritz and Mark Parker are going to be joining to talk a little bit more about why good programs are losing their liability insurance and what there is to do about this. So we're going to be uncovering why coverage is being lost and what we can do about it. We're going to be exploring licensing data, how it's used to assess risk, where the current approaches also fall short, and how a fairer compliance framework could significantly change outcomes for providers across the entire industry. So I know insurance for the last couple of years has been a big topic of conversation, and we have some folks coming in to talk a bit more about that. You could scan the QR code or go to ecewebinars.com/insurance to join as well. This one's going to be on August 6th. Now, this is the point of the presentation where I get to announce our Lucky Door Prize winners. And today, our two door prize winners are Valerie Johnson, congratulations, and Rosa Gutierrez. Congratulations to Valerie and Rosa. You both just won a $75 gift card to the Playground Savings Club. We'll get that over to you ASAP. And if you are not Valerie or Rosa, you still have a chance to win two more gift cards. I guess one more gift card, but we're giving out two of them. And the way you do that is by filling out the survey that's going to pop up in about, I don't know, 2 minutes or so, maybe less. It takes less than 30 seconds to fill out and helps us tremendously. This is where we ask you for what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can make better for you. And we read every single word and syllable, and it helps us tremendously. So if you could take the time to fill it out, we would sure appreciate it. And two lucky survey respondents will be selected at random, and we'll get in touch with you to get you your gift cards. Now, if you've been here the whole time, you are going to be getting your personalized certificate of attendance in your ECI portal. There's a link in the bottom if you want to go to it, and by email within 7 days. So you can scan the QR code or go to ecewebinars.com/portal. Um, Give us, yeah, about 7 days or so to get that over to you. And if you joined late, you left early, or you're watching this as a recording, here is your instant blank certificate link that you can use. And this is going to be something that you can download right now if you'd like. And I would recommend everyone else to go to our website and check out just ecewebinars.com. You can register for all of our upcoming webinars. Hannah's been doing an incredible job of putting together a great schedule of speakers and a wide variety of topics that we're going to be covering over the remainder of the summer and into fall. And so you can go there, you can like register for free, get notified in the days and weeks leading up to those webinars, and we'd love to see you there. So that all being said, thank you all so much for the time today. We hope to see you on. We also have another presentation tomorrow or at another webinar here shortly. That all being said, thanks again to Kate and to Hannah and to all of you for spending time with us. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.